so two suited hands. Now on the actual board I've put Michael's cubit and the unusual two-note trumps. That's because those are the two bits I'm going to be focusing on before in a kind of way to represent these two suited hands. There are other two suited bits. I'll touch on them lightly, but I'm going to be focusing mainly on these two, basically because these are the two that I recommend. Most pairs play these two bits in tandem with one another to represent these two suited hands. So a two-suited hand, when I'm talking about a two-suited hand, it can be 4-4, 5-4, or 5-5 or whatever, that you can refer to a two-suited hand with two suits of 4 or more cards. But when we're talking about two-suited overcalls, we typically are talking about 5 cards or more. That's because to overcall a suit you need 5. So the hands you have problems with are the 5-5, 6-5 hands, the real extreme shape hands, because it's quite difficult to bid those hands without any conventional bids. If you have, let's say, 6 spades, 5 hearts, and you're an overcaller or an opener, you have to bid spades, then hearts, then spades, which is quite a lot of bidding. You often won't get 4 bites. In fact, sometimes you don't even get 2 if the opponents get in. And what you find with these shapely hands is that if you've got a lot of shapes, so have the opponents. So the bidding is quite explosive. 1 spade, 4 clubs, 4 spades, 6 clubs, kind of craziness. Before you get in, with your second bid, you can often find you're at quite a high level because of the shape that's around the table. So you often need a way of representing these 5-5, 6-5 kind of hands, and without conventions it's quite difficult. So playing Michaels and the unusual two-note trumps are essentially a conventional agreement to help you get these hands off your chest. They are very, very good when these hands get dealt. The thing is, you don't get 5-5s extremely often, so when it comes up once every 100 hands, you've got to remember about playing this conventional thing.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
These are only applicable to overcalling, is that right?
Yes, there is a way to show 5-5 as an opener, which I'll talk about in a minute, but it's highly unusual.
Because I always find difficulty showing like a 6-5 or a 5-5.
As an
For
opener,
all those reasons you just said.
yeah, as an opener, you
It's really
essentially just have to
hard.
keep going until you do your best.
Yeah.
With an extremely good hand, you could open 2 clubs, but even then, it's
Even
hard.
then, it's hard to get a hand
So
on the
if you were dealt 6-5 and you were the dealer, there is a way to show it, but you have to sacrifice weak 2s, so it's not really a good idea necessarily.
But we're focusing on overcalling.
Mainly, yeah, because there is a way to get out of the problem. Now, let's just kind of put up a typical two-suited hand. Now, as ever with overcallers, the suits that you want are good quality. With a 5-5 shape, you can be a bit more lax, if you like, with suit quality tests, because your 5-5 shape is a very trick-taking shape, it's a very offensive shape. When you end up with one of your suits as trumps, you often take a lot of tricks just because of your pure shape. And that's why you can be so aggressive in the bidding. Now, if you were dealer with this hand, you would start with a spade, bid hearts, and then bid hearts again. That would be ideal. If you were allowed to bid 3 times, that would be the perfect way of representing 5 and 5. Don't forget you always start with the higher ranking. As an overcaller, it's often actually less likely, well it is, less likely that you will get 3 bids. Because they've opened the bidding, they are likely to want to do something. Probably in this instance, agree a minor of some description. So, as an overcaller, it's often more difficult to get these shapes across, which is why you play a conventional bid as an overcaller more often than an opener. You can agree something known as Lucas 2s, which we played very shortly, for about a year ago. And Lucas 2s are a way of opening at the 2 level to represent these 5-5 hands. You open 2 hearts, and that says I've got 5 hearts and 5 of a minor.
But that's only when you've got a weak one, not a strong one.
Yeah, so the strong one you still have to go through 1. Yeah. So it's an imperfect world, essentially. There are ways of representing them as an opener, but it means you have to sacrifice other bids. The reason you don't need to sacrifice other bids when the opponents open is because they've created a whole new kind of amount of artificial bids. Because now 2 clubs and 3 clubs and 4 clubs, well, any number of clubs, are all artificial now. Whereas if you hadn't had that bid, 1 club and 2 club and 3, they would all be clubs. Well, 2 clubs would be the special hand, but you know what I mean. So, in this instance, having the opponents having opened the bidding, they've actually created more artificial bids for us. So having done that, we can then use those artificial bids to describe these difficult hands. A Q-bid is always when you bid the opponent's suit. So when you bid the opponent's suit, it's not natural because it makes no sense for you to bid 2 clubs, meaning you've got clubs. If you were dealt clubs and they've opened clubs, you should just pass because you don't have a fit. It's not a good idea to get involved. So what we use the Q-bid for is to show these two suited hands. There isn't really another use for it. You could agree something else, like I've got this many points or I've got this shape, but we use the Michael's cubit, assuming you've agreed with your partner, to show a two-suited hand. Now, because we are always in the bidding, always looking to show as many majors as possible, major fits are obviously king, the Michael's cubit also follows that kind of pattern in that you show as many majors as possible. So when you do 1 minor, 2 minor, the same minor, that shows as many majors as possible, in that case 2. So you're showing 2 5-card major suits. Again, ideally, you would have your points in your suits, because you are essentially making an overcall. What you're really doing is you're bidding 1 spade and 1 heart all in one bid, which is very, very efficient. Because if you bid 1 spade, 3 clubs, pass, 3 hearts, your partner still doesn't any true shape. So when these hands do come up, the efficiency of these bids is very good.
It's fantastic
when they come up, yeah, because you just go, bam, there's my hand, off you go. It happens rarely, that's the point, yeah. So, because 2 clubs is not needed to be a natural bid, you can use it to show these 2 suited hands. And it's always as many majors as possible. The reason I say that sentence, not a very well worded sentence, is because if you remember as many majors as possible, you can't really go wrong. If there's no majors being bid, you've got them. If there has been a major bid, it's the other major. And that way you sort of can't forget, if you like. Now, with 1 minor, 2 minor, it's both majors. So there is in fact I'll talk about that in a minute, there is a 5-5 shape that you can't quite get off your chest, which I'll show in a minute. Now, with both majors it's straightforward, you just cubit theirs. If you had a major opening, that means that your cubit is now a major. So let's say 1 heart, 2 hearts. Now, obviously you can't bid 2 hearts here, because 2 hearts is artificial. So this isn't as many majors as possible in the sense that it's both majors still, because there's no point you representing a heart suit. Similar to there's no point you representing a club suit a minute ago. So that would be something along the lines of as many majors as possible still. So 5-5 in spades and another suit. As many majors as possible means you anchor to the spades, so you definitely have spades by cubiting a major, and you have another 5-card suit. There are different overcalling systems like guess stem and quantum where you can specify which suit you have. So I have spades and diamonds, or spades and clubs. The reason Michael's is more preferable is because the flexibility of that means you don't need to have a complex tiering structure of which one shows which side suit. Because this just generically shows 5-5. What you tend to find is that everybody can work out which 5-5 it is based on their shape. South will probably have 4 hearts, 5 clubs, and 2-2 in spades and diamonds or something, so they'll know which suit you have almost always. What I'm saying is that by playing Michael's, you're making your life a lot easier because you only have to remember 1 round of bidding.
Yeah, and you're focusing on finding a major fit.
Exactly, so really it's all major fit finding. Now you might have a diamond fit and not a spade fit. There is a way for your partner to ask which minor it is, which I'll talk about in a minute, but you can always nearly tell. So it's not a big price to pay for this other suit to be non-specified. Because it's clubs or diamonds, you can almost always tell from what's going on in the bidding and what's going on in your hand. But there is a way of asking. So minor, minor, both majors, major, major, as many majors, i.e. the other major, and a minor. Always 5-5, always good quality suits. Always asterisk, if you're not vulnerable and you feel like being a bit aggressive, you can treat queen 10-5 as good enough if you like. Really, you want to have honours in your suits. The more honours in your suits, the more trick taking you will do when your suit ends up as trumps. If you have points in your short suits, the hand becomes a lot less attractive. If I kind of remove all our points in our suits and make us have really good short suits, you can see now that whilst that's a similar number of points, the hand's value has really diminished. Because when you end up with your suit as trumps, you actually aren't necessarily going to get your trumps or your side suit going. Whereas with ace queen to 5, queen 10 to 5, let's say, that's a much more attractive prospect. So just like normal overcalling rules, you want goodies in your suits. Especially the suit you're specifying, because your partner absolutely knows you have spades in this instance. If your diamonds are a bit ropey, because it's 5-5 and these hands don't come up very often, it's often good to use the Michael's bid just to get it across to your partner. So don't be, upset that you've only got queen jack to 5, but just be aware that if hands like this, I don't think are applicable to use it. When it's really bottom of the barrel stuff, you should still follow the rules. But 5-5 shape you can take a few liberties, especially not vulnerable. The more points in your short suits, the worse. The more points in your long suits, the better, basically. Now, if your partner owns one heart, and you go, I'll go back to the hand that looks nice rather than the miserable one. Let's say Ace Queen, King 10, something like that. Now, after one heart opening, you can show spades in another suit nicely with Michael's. After one club opening, you have a problem. Because one club, two clubs, that would show both majors. One club, one spade would just show spades. One club, one diamond would just show diamonds. There is a gap in the Michael's system, isn't there? In that you can't show major minor where they've opened a minor. This is, if you like, a flaw to the Michael's system, but we're sacrificing being able to describe this hand to gain simplicity. There are systems like Quantum and Gestem where you can play one club, two clubs is something, one club, three clubs is something else, and one club, two no trumps is something else, and you can always do your, because there's only ever three patterns, either spades, hearts, spades, diamonds, or diamonds, hearts. There's only ever three combinations of the missing suits. So you can play more complicated two-suited overcall systems to specify exactly what's going on. I don't think it's worth it, because when it comes round to it, the headache of that, oh, we haven't played this in about 3 months, which suits is it, often leads you to more trouble. So I think the more simplistic you can keep it whilst maintaining these, if you like, fancy bits, the better, which is why I recommend Michael's. So with this particular hand, I would just bid one spade. Now I appreciate that's unattractive in that you haven't got a clever bid to come up with it, but the spade suit is more important to get across than that diamond suit because it's a major, and we don't have a way of showing specifically spades and diamonds after a club and specifically spades and clubs after a diamond. They're the only two combinations, I think. Yeah. So Michael's does have a bit of a gap, if you like, when it's major minor and they open a minor. That can cause you to some problems. It's somewhere in the region of about 10% of the actual 5-5 hands. So you're not losing a huge amount. But you, as I say, if you are interested in covering all bases, you can have a look at Quantum or Gestem as a system, which covers absolutely everything. It's a lot more complicated though, so just be aware it might take some time to absorb it. Now, given that we're talking about all majory things, there needs to be a way to show minor hands as well. Just because we've been dealt minors, I mean, yes, we should be sad about having been dealt minors, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't get involved in the bidding, especially with 5-5 shape, because you can be quite preemptive. So, kind of Michael's Cupid's cousin, if you like, is the unusual two no trumps. The reason it's called unusual two no trumps is because you're bidding two no trumps, but you do not have a balanced hand. In fact, you have the opposite. You're saying you are quite unbalanced. So that's why it's called unusual, because bidding no trumps frequently in the bidding would suggest some kind of balanced nature. The argument here is, when the opponents open the bidding, two no trumps is actually a bit of a dead bid, because one no trump will show 15 to 18 with a spade stopper. If you had a better balanced hand than that, you could double first and then bid one no trump. So bidding two no trumps doesn't really need to exist as 2022. First of all, it doesn't happen very often. You've been dealt 20 and they've opened the bidding. That happens exceptionally rarely. And secondly, if you did have that hand, there is a way of dealing with it anyway, by doubling first and then bidding no trumps. So you don't actually need two no trumps as a natural bid. So again, we use this bid as an artificial bid, which needs a little thingy. And instead of focusing on the minors, we then focus on, instead of focusing on the majors, we focus on the minors. That's because we have a way of showing almost every shape with Michael's Cupid. Therefore, we need a way of showing the low suits rather than the high suits. So the unusual two no trumps suggests that you have 5-5 in the two lowest suits, rather than the highest suits you can. So this one focuses on majors, this one focuses on minors. Yes?
As you're going to be pitching people up to the 3 level with this, do you need more points to do this one or not?
Good point. Essentially, it's more about suit quality than points. I would say, yes, be a little bit more cautious with the unusual two no trumps. Because they're minors, you are going to end up at the 3 level as a minimum. Often you will end up at the 3 level anyway with Michael's Cupid, but you can get out at the 2 level. So yeah, be a little bit more cautious with it. Suit quality, be more stringent on, I would say, rather than points. I have accidentally, or perhaps not, given myself slightly better minors than I did majors. Perhaps that's because I'm sort of instinctively realising I need a better minor suit. Minors are obviously worse, So you've got to be a little bit more careful with them, essentially. But yeah, good point. Yes.
Presumably, if West opens one diamond, the two no trumps will still apply because it's the two lowest numbers.
Yes,
Yeah.
so you can get flexible with that. Now, I'll talk about that in a minute, because with West open one diamond, our hand doesn't look as good now, but
No.
I'll talk about it in a minute. So yeah, it's the two lowest unbid suits, which is frequently, but not always, the minors. In that instance, you can then cover almost all bases. As I say, there are the occasional gap, but pretty much with these two systematic bids, you can cover almost every 5-5 shape by showing either a Q bid or a jump to two no trumps. It's got to be a jump to two no trumps when they open one, because if they open, let's say, two spades as a weak two no trumps, you need that as natural. So be aware, it's only unusual if it is unusual. Do you see what I mean?
Jump.
Yeah, if it's only unusual two no trumps if it's an unusual thing to have done. Bidding two no trumps over a weak two is not unusual, because you need a natural no trump bid there. So just be aware of that. You could play it as unusual, but you really want it to be a natural no trump. Okay? So it's only after one level openings, really, does this two no trump show a two suited hand. This can lead you to problems. If your partner thinks you're 20-22 when you're 5-5 in the minors, things go very wrong, because you are really polar opposite there. One's weak with a distribution, one's strong with no distribution, so they are really opposite kind of hands. Partner with 6 no trumps over this, you've got big problems. They should probably wonder what on earth's going on if they need 6 over their opening hand again. Anyway, so when you have these kind of bids, these are kind of related bids, if you like. If you play both Michaels and unusual, a lot of pairs sort of treat these as if they're the same convention, because they're so closely related. You sort of need one with the other to be able to cover almost every shape. You can, as I say, play different systems that are more complex, that cover every single eventuality, but these two are very good at dealing with the vast majority of cases. Now notice the unusual two no trumps is the two lowest unbid suits. So if they bid a suit that is low, i.e. a minor, two no trumps does not represent a minor hand, because they've opened a minor. Therefore, the two lowest unbid suits now means you have hearts and clubs. Sorry, we need some diamonds. Notice with the unusual two no trumps, you can never show spades, because if they go one diamond or one heart or one club or one spade, it's either minors or hearts and the other minor. There is a world where you could show spades as a two-suited hand if they bid both other suits, but then it's obvious which suits you've got, whether you use unusual two no trumps or Q bid or a double. All of those bids show the other two suits anyway. So you can't really represent spades with a two no trump bid, because it's never one of the lowest unbid suits. So essentially, the only time you miss with these systems is when you've been dealt spades in a minor and they open a minor. It's the only time it goes wrong. So I suppose that's not too much to worry about. Now, if you were dealt a 5-5 and they open one of your 5-card suits, it's worth noting that your hand's value has now disintegrated. Not entirely, but it's now nowhere near as good as it was, because your chances of a fit have severely diminished. Because if you have a fit with your opponents, it means you are unlikely to have a fit with your partner. Similarly, they are unlikely to have a fit with their partner. Well, you know for a certain, almost, that East doesn't have a heart fit for West. So the hand is starting to be less attractive to play, because there are misfits rather than fits. When they open one spade or one diamond, I'm delighted to get involved in this hand. When they open one heart or one club, I'm more cautious. You might still bid two clubs, but to be honest, I'm not particularly keen on that. Over one club, I probably would bid one heart, but again, I'm not enthralled about this hand. Whereas after one diamond or one spade, I'm quite excited about the prospect of being able to play in one of my suits. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
So it's all about whether there's a fit hand going on or a misfit hand. In this instance, when they open one of our suits, just be aware that your hand is nowhere near as good as it was when you first looked at it, because the bidding has changed. Okay? In this instance, there is no fancy bid. You can't show a 5-5 club heart hand because they bid one of your suits. So you just bid your other suit, or you don't bid at all. Okay? Now, responding to these bids, normally, because your partner is so distributional, they want to play in one of their suits. In fact, almost always will they want to play in one of their suits. So what you need to do is bid whichever one of their suits you prefer. So let's come up with some kind of gubbins. So West opens a spade, partner bids two spades, which is hearts and another suit, at least 5-5. You can essentially treat this as if they've overcalled both suits at once. So they've bid two hearts and they've also bid 2 of a minor. Now, in this instance, we aren't sure of which minor it is. Looking at our hand, it's most likely to be clubs. It isn't guaranteed nailed on to be clubs, but it is quite likely to be clubs. So you should just treat it as if it's kind of worst case scenario for your minor. So in this instance, if partner had hearts and clubs, we prefer hearts. We actually quite like hearts, we don't just prefer them. So we should follow the level of the fit. That's because when they bid 2 spades, they've essentially bid 2 hearts and 2 of a minor at once. So you just pick whichever one you like out of that, and then respond as if they've done that. So them having bid 2 hearts means that our level of the fit would be 3 hearts. Now notice you are forced into bidding. It's an unusual scenario. When your partner overcalls, normally it's a non-forcing bid. 2 hearts doesn't force you to bid as an overcaller. But 2 spades, because they bid a Q bid, they don't want to play in 2 spades. So if you pass 2 spades, that will likely lead to a very bad result. So you need to bid something anyway. So you treat it as if they bid whichever one of your favourites, in this case hearts, and bid accordingly. So in this instance, I would bid 3 hearts. And in this instance, I would bid 3 hearts. It's difficult for your partner to pin down exactly what you're doing. If you like, you're just choosing your favourite. If you think game is a realistic prospect, let's say you've got, I don't know.
So in that last one,
Sorry.
the level of the fit's 2 hearts, but you still have to go up. Obviously.
You have to bid 3 hearts, exactly. Level of the fit here
Yeah.
is 2 hearts. And I would like to bid 2 hearts if I could,
Yeah.
but I can't because they've not let me. So you bid 3 hearts.
Yeah.
Be aware, as a Michaelsy person, you are often forcing your partner to the 3 level where they may not be comfortable. So be aware, having represented your hand, you shouldn't really be doing much more bidding unless you've got extra shape, 6-5, 6-6 kind of time. Because you've said you've got 5-5, they often bid what they feel comfortable with, occasionally uncomfortable with. So you should kind of trust that they've made the right decision. And therefore I would pass 3 hearts as north unless I had exceptional extra shape, 6-5 and a void or something. Now, if you have a good hand and you think, actually, you know what, I fancy our chances of game here because of my partner's shape. Notice you don't often need many points to make game because of their exceptional shape. So what will often happen is you draw the trumps and play on their second suit. It's often a way of making lots of tricks, is when you've kind of got 2 suits to go at, you draw them and then you run down them. You can often make 10 tricks in their 2 suits alone, sometimes, if their suits are good enough. So in this instance, I'm feeling, well, I feel like having a go at game. They've got 5-5 in hearts and most likely clubs. If it's 5-5 in hearts and diamonds, fantastic, we've got loads of tricks. If it's 5-5 in hearts and clubs, it's still a good prospect because we can either trump clubs here or our ace of clubs will make it that their clubs are running anyway. So with a sort of opening hand with good fits, I would start considering just bidding game based on the prospect that it's going to make. Of course, you could have a genuine level of the fit game where you're just bidding 4 hearts because you've got 10 trumps anyway. Just be aware that you can often make quite a lot of tricks when your partner's got such good shape. If you've got good cards, especially aces and kings, which are very good concentrated values, you can make quite a lot of tricks. Okay? You will find this kind of bidding experience is going to be quite explosive most of the time, though, and the opponents will try to make you have to guess at a high level when you've got a good fit, because that means they've got a good fit. Yes?
Will ace often shove up to 3 spades with no points at all just to shove
Maybe,
you up?
yeah. Yeah, possibly, yeah. I mean, often defending against these bids, the way is to just kind of be a bit more aggressive. They've essentially laid their hand down on the table with there because it's so descriptive. So you sort of know what's going on, so you often stretch to try and make their life awkward. So it's fairly realistic to think that East would pump it up with 3 spades or even 4 spades if they had loads of spades and no points.
And then you're a bit stumped, really.
Yeah, then you've got to make a judgment. These hands often lead to kind of judgment calls at the 4 and 5 level because there's so much shape.
And lots of doubling, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now there is something about Michaels that is often mentioned which is known as good or bad. You might have heard people mentioning that before, where they're either weak with a Michaels bid or strong with a Michaels bid, and in the middle they just bid their suits. I'm of the opinion that when the Michaels bids comes up, it's more useful to just use them. So I'm not particularly worried about whether you're 8, 9 points or 10, 12, 13 points. I think if you've got 5-5 and a Michaels bid is possible, use it because it's so efficient. I'm not worried about partner thinking we've got an opening hand when we've only got 8 or 9 because a 5-5 shape is so powerful anyway. I'm not particularly worried about that. There are players who play Michaels when they're weak and Michaels when they're strong, which never happens by the way. And then the middle bit, they use kind of a more natural bidding system. But I think that's a waste personally. I think you should use Michaels as much as possible when it comes up because it doesn't come up often anyway. Now, if you don't like your partner's anchor suit, so when it goes 1 major, 2 major, you know of one of their 2 suits. If you don't like their suit and you need to ask them which their other suit is, you need a way of asking which is your minor, essentially. In this instance, I appreciate I've given us a problem on purpose, but in this instance, we certainly don't want to play in 3 hearts, or 4 hearts, or any number of hearts. We want to play in whatever our partner's minor is. So we need a way of asking them. The way you ask them is to bid 2 no trumps, and that says, tell me your minor. It's very similar to Aspro. Aspro, 2 no trumps says, show me your minor, in the sense that 2 no trumps can't really be natural, because if you wanted to play no trumps, that's very unusual, given that your partner has a 5-5 shape. It's highly unlikely that the 5-5 shape wants no trumps. They want one of their 5-card suits as trumps. So 2 no trumps as an artificial bid is a way of asking about what minor they've got. It only happens when it goes major-major that you aren't 100% certain of their suits. As I say, you will nearly always be able to tell based on their bidding, based on your hand. But if you aren't certain like this can happen. You bid 2 no trumps to ask them to bid their minor. Okay? Right. If they bid 1 banana, 2 no trumps, 1 heart, 2 no trumps, if they use the unusual 2 no trumps, those suits are always specified. So because they are always specified, you never have a wonder of what
You
suits
don't have
they've
to ask
got.
them,
You
yeah.
don't ever have to ask them. So the fact that they've used your asking bid is not a problem, because they've told you, so you don't need to ask. So in this instance, I would just bid some number of clubs or diamonds. I'd be fairly keen to actually probably sacrifice in clubs and diamonds here, because we have a double fit in clubs and diamonds with this particular hand. I suspect East will be doing something along the lines of that on this board. And then you've got to make a decision. Do you bid 5 clubs or diamonds, or do you pass, depending on vulnerability now. But as I say, often you will get painstaking decisions with a lot of shape about. It's just judgment time, really. And obviously vulnerability and stuff comes into it. Double fits produce lots of tricks. So if you do have a double fit, you do really want to be declarer if you can all avoid it. Now, one more thing to kind of think about is what to do when the opponents make a 2-suited bid and you are the person responding to your partner. So if it was 1 heart, 2 hearts, as we just briefly discussed, as Alison pointed out, often you want to try and push the next person to bid because they've got quite a lot of information about their partner's hand. So often you want to push them to potentially bid a little bit more. So if you had a fit with your partner, you know that it's a fit auction, you want to stretch a little bit to try and just make their life a little bit awkward. So let's say something like that. Normally you would raise 1 heart or 2 hearts if we were in kind of normal world, but because they bid a 2-suited overcall, you think it's likely that they've got a spade or a diamond fit. That's what we're feeling like. So if you could bid 3 hearts, that may well put South under quite a bit of pressure as to whether they bid 3 spades or 4 diamonds or not. So when you're trying to defend against these bids, stretch a little bit. You know, again, consider vulnerability. Be aware, if you're this person, that your partner may well have stretched. But if you have a fit, it feels like a fit auction, you want to play the hand. If you don't have a fit, it's a misfit auction, you don't want to play the hand. That can be generic rules. Now, I'm not particularly keen on bidding 3 hearts, but I think it's better than pass on this particular hand, because I feel like South was probably going to bid 3 diamonds, but not necessarily, but probably. And so they might bid 2 spades, I suppose, but at least by bidding 3 hearts, you're making their life a little bit more tricky. You've got a bit of level.
Well, they can't do 2 no trumps.
And they can't do 2 no trumps to ask, yeah, so you are sort of starting to scupper their systems a little.
So what do they do if they need to know what the
Double.
minor is?
Double.
That
If they
also
bid in the
says-
way, double says, I don't know what to do, you do it, which must be 2 for the minor, just logically.
No.
If they're wanting to bid but they don't want to bid, double is always a get out.
Not 3 clubs pass all correct then.
No, 3 clubs would say you've got clubs in that instance, but you can't bid 3 clubs over 3 hearts.
No, 4 clubs.
Yeah, 4 clubs would be lots of clubs, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
You can agree all sorts of stuff though. One more thing to think about is that these Michaels E bids can also occur at higher levels. For example, so they've opened 3 clubs rather than 1 club. What's 4 clubs? It's still the majors because it's a Michaels Q bid. It's just a bit of a higher, a lot of a higher Michaels Q bid. So really, here you want a better hand. You don't want to be messing about with kind of 5-5, king to 5, king to 5 time. You want to have a genuinely good hand, whether that's a 6-5, 6-6 kind of shape, or whether it's more values. I would expect at least a good opening hand if you are only 5-5, because you are forcing your partner to make a decision at the 4 level. Again, shape is playing a big role, so you don't necessarily need the 25 points to make game because of your shape, but you don't want to be messing about with rubbishy Michaels here. When they make a preemptive bid, like 2 diamonds or 3 clubs, 4 clubs, to bid a Michaels bid, the higher and higher you get, the better and better your suits and hands need to be. Try not to be suicidal at the 4 level. I appreciate it would be very tempting. If you were dealt ace to 5, king to 5, 2 small, 1 small, you'd think, oh, finally a Michaels hand. And then they open 3 clubs, you're probably going to be quite sad because you want them to own 1 club, so you can bid 2 clubs. Just be aware that when you're forcing at a higher and higher and higher level, you need a better and better and better hand because your partner could have no fit for you necessarily, although it's likely they do, given that this hand won't have too many majors. Alright? So you can do them at higher levels, but just be aware you need a better hand, naturally.
Yeah.
But you can do them at higher levels. You can't do the unusual 2-no trumps at higher levels because 2-no trumps is then not a jump. So if they open 2 hearts, 2-no trumps is not a jump. If they open 3 hearts, you can't bid 2-no trumps. So with both minors, it's quite awkward after they open the preemptive bid. Just bid your diamonds, then bid your clubs, if you get the chance. Essentially, this bid is removed when they open anything other than 1, because you can't have 2-no trumps as unusual. You need it as natural, if at all applicable. Okay? Yeah? Right. One more thing. And then I'm done. Promise. 1 spade, 2 no trumps, minors. As East, we talked a little bit about bidding to stretch. If you have your own suit that you can bid, in this case, which must be hearts, because they've got spades, they've got diamonds and clubs, you can just bid it. Again, be aware, you're at the 3 level, so you aren't necessarily in a safe spot. Something like that. You can bid your own suit if you wish. Just because they bid a 2-suited bid doesn't mean they cut you out. You can bid your own suit if you wish. So if you have the 4th suit, then you can bid it if you want. So in this case, you could bid 3 hearts. Again, because you're responding at the 3 level rather than 2 level, you need a better hand. All of these bids push everything up. They really increase the ante. So often you feel uncomfortable because you're stretching all of the time. In this instance, I feel like they probably have a club fit, which means we probably have a heart fit, but it's not certain, but it's probably correct to bid your heart suit. It feels like pass will be a bit wimpish. I hope you agree. But it is an uncomfortable scenario because really you wanted to respond 2 hearts to 1 spade and then let your partner tell you what they've got. But obviously they've got in their way. It'll probably go 3 hearts, 4 clubs, and they've got a difficult decision over 4 clubs. Make both of your lives quite difficult. Alright?
But you're going to have the balance of the points east west, aren't you?
We are.
Yeah.
So I feel like we can probably make game in hearts, but then they might try and sacrifice in 5 clubs, and you've got to decide, do you bid 5 hearts, do you double them? It's all the rules and stuff again. It's not easy, not necessarily easy. Now if they did something that you think, actually I don't mind defending, so if I kind of put the queen down here, and make it that we have some goodies in their suits, they've actually done something that you think is incorrect. You think that they've bid a 2-suited over. Well, it wasn't incorrect because they were dealt diamonds and clubs, but you feel like the hand is a bit misfitty. They've bid what relies on a fit. This bid sort of relies on a fit to function, and they've bid a bid that actually it looks like South doesn't like. That's my instinct. So we wouldn't mind defending. So after 1 banana and some kind of 2-suited bid, double is used as a way of saying, I think they've made the wrong thing, we've got the balance of the points, and I feel like they're going to end up in a dodgy contract. If you like, double is penalty orientated.
But that gives them the clue. You're not about to wait till they bid it and then double them.
You could, but then it would look like takeout. If they bid 3 clubs, let's say, and it goes pass, pass, double, then would look like you're trying to balance and compete against their preemptive bid. Well, whatever this is. So if you want to take out pass and then double, if you double here, the thing is you've sort of got them, because even if you're sort of saying out loud, I don't think you're going to make the contract you bid, South still has to bid, because they can't play in 2 no trumps. So it's a bit like a face-up, you're telling them out loud you're in trouble and they can't get out of the trouble, they're already in the boiling pan, if you like. So double is penalty orientated.
So do you try not to smile with that double?
Yeah, you double and then your partner go, ooh.
Little evil.
Yeah, and you think, there's 2 suited bids not work for them essentially. Now, this doesn't happen very often because it means you need to be able to tolerate defending either of their suits.
So then do you After you do it then, and they say
They
they've got
say-
other diamonds.
3 diamonds, let's say. Your partner will likely pass because they are respecting
And then
that you
do
want.
double for penalties the next time then.
Yes, if that's what you want to do. So they will most likely pass because their partner's decided, and then double here because your original double was penalty orientated. This is now a penalty double. Just be aware you can extract a penalty if they do a 2-suited thing that you think is wrong, but it's unusual for you to have the suits that they've got. That's unusual.
It
More
does
frequently,
happen, though, doesn't
it does happen, but it's more frequently it will be a fit auction where you want to be bidding rather than doubling. More frequently. Okay.
So many permutations.
There is a lot going on.
The no trump doesn't have to be at the 2 level, does it? The unusual 2 no trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do an unusual 4 no trumps
Yeah.
after a preemptive
No. 3.
3 or 4 something. Let's say 4 hearts. The thing about the unusual, the thing about the unusual 4 no trumps is that obviously now you're forced into the 5 levels, so you need extreme stuff going on here. I would say 6-5, 6-6, or an exceptional 5-5. Really good opening 5-5, sort of 16 up or something like that. Because again, you're forcing your partner to 5 level. They might have hearts and spades and be thinking,
So if West open 3 hearts,
mm-hmm.
there's no such thing as a 3 no trump to show
No.
unusual.
You could play it, but you really want 3 no trumps as natural.
Yeah.
3 no trumps is like a safety bastion. You always need that as a contract.
Yeah.
So 4 no trumps there
Would
would
be fine.
say spades and another.
No, 4 hearts would say spades and another.
Oh yeah.
4 no trumps would say minors.
Mm.
First minus.
But again, this happens super infrequently.
Yeah.
I
Really,
have seen
really
somebody do it
infrequently.
actually. We've played against somebody
Yeah.
doing it.
Simon
in
Rush
Rush when
Yeah, it's
Four
very,
no
very
trumps
useful when it
was
comes up.
carnage.
Really useful when it comes up. It just doesn't go very often. These are, if 2 no trumps comes up 1 in every 100 hands, 4 no trumps, this will come 1 in every 1,000 hands or something like that. It really is really infrequent stuff. But it's good to know that you can do it, because there will be a time where you dealt 6-6 in the minors and you don't know what to do after 3 cards. That's what you use this bit for. Okay.